Winona LaDuke, White Earth Indian Reservation, Minnesota. According to my people, the Ojibwe, the first game of lacrosse was played between the mammals and the birds. The bat, that creature which spans two worlds, won that game for the mammals. So today, birds fly south in the winter, while the mammals stay put. Later, the creator gifted the sport to the two-legged. Since then, it has been the creator's game. Lacrosse is the fastest growing sport in the United States, Uganda, Belgium, China, Colombia, Costa Rica, Israel, Russia, Thailand, Turkey, and 28 other nations competed in the 2014 World Championships. The history of lacrosse is also the history of attempts by the Iroquois Nation, the longest-standing democracy in North America, to gain recognition under international law. In the last half of the 19th century, the East Coast European American elite adopted lacrosse as a collegiate sport. But the native teams remained dominant. In the late 19th century, and for much of the 20th, the Iroquois teams were so strong that the government of Canada excluded them from international competition on the pretext that, because they played exhibition matches to fund their travel expenses, they were professional athletes and ineligible.
Ken Miller, founder Long Island Sting Boys Lacrosse Club. Well, first of all, I'm not a recruiter. I do not recruit kids. I act as an intermediary in a consultant capacity. I've had one or two schools call me about the kids on my team because we have a very successful program, but my role is, first of all, tell the parents that the focal point about this is nothing more than the education, because they're using lacrosse to get into a school that they likely not would have gained admission to, right? My daughter was an All-American in college. She was my first and didn't have much of an understanding of the process. You're basically learning it as you go along, which is disconcerting because there is no one at arm's length you could possibly necessarily ask about the process. A lot of sleepless nights, a lot of confusion about what happens at an IV versus what happens at an ACC, what happens at, the upper tier division, NCAA Division III. It's important that the parents understand what they're up against. I mean, there's 100 websites where kids can put their highlight reels and their statistics and their proposed summer schedule. With few exceptions, the upper-tier academic institutions, the college coaches have some leeway in getting them in their recruits who may be below the reported index for matriculating freshmen who aren't athletes. Look at the tournament circuit now. Let's assume a kid is doing 5 events. Every parent minimally is out of pocket $5,000 for the season when you throw in hotels, food, travel. Everyone thinks if they're going to play at the college level. I think 14 of our 24 kids from last year ended up in Division I. They're not going to get on the field for the first 2 years. So I completely discourage those kids from choosing a school based on playing time. It's based on the academics first, and or potentially money. If mom and dad don't have the wherewithal, you can choose a school for financial reasons. But I don't think projecting playing time is productive at all. It's up to that kid's family as to what their son and daughter can or cannot handle. I was just on the phone with a family from Florida. The kid is a 3-sport athlete, which is unusual, but if you come from 1% of the gene pool, he did 4 tournaments last year and didn't even break a sweat. Some kids do 1 tournament and they're burnt out. My name means Little Sky. I come from the Cayuga Nation, the Wolf Clan. That's who I run with. That is my family. We have what we call 3 land animals, 3 air animals, and 3 water animals comprise our Haudenosaunee society. And that is how we govern ourselves. It will always be that way, and it will continue to be that way for now and forever how long we are on this plane. We were banned in 1890 from playing our game. It wasn't until 100 years later that we were reinstated to play our game. But we couldn't play the field version of the game, but we still played our own medicine game. We played box lacrosse. We still played that. They changed the playing surface. They changed the playing field. They came up with the National Lacrosse Association with their own governing body and rules saying, this is how we are going to play now. We can't beat you, so what we're going to do is we're going to ban you. My auntie was a clan mother. Women pretty much hold the balance of power because we come from a matrilineal community. It's not the guys. I asked her before she passed away, what do you think, auntie, about girls playing lacrosse? She says, you know what? If it gives them an opportunity to advance not only themselves but their lifestyle and contribute to their families in the future, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It is just part of the natural evolution. But there are still some staunch communities that don't want our girls playing lacrosse. In 2015, our under-19 girls team, who had been practicing for 4 years, were not allowed to go compete in the World Games in Scotland because they would not recognize and honor our passports. We have been traveling on them for years, our own Haudenosaunee passports, but because we don't consider ourselves Canadian or American, we are Haudenosaunee people, original beings and people of the Longhouse. Well, right now I'm a lacrosse coach out in the West Coast. In the 1980s, I was able to recruit 26 high school All-Americans to go to Vermont, even though we had no scholarships to offer the players. They came on their own just to play. At that time, we were out recruiting Dartmouth and Brown. In those 4 years, we beat Notre Dame, Georgetown, Lehigh, Michigan, and Ohio State every year. We would write a letter of recommendation that goes to their file saying, "This young man is of good character. He wants to play lacrosse for us. He'll graduate on time. He has a good reputation." That was it. We were very successful. If the kid had a 26 on his ACT and a 2.5 grade point average on his high school transcript, I could get him in. In 1994, I started a service, recruit and marketing service for high school parents of boys. Now I'll put a marketing package together for them, help them get into college. Based on his tapes, I could tell not only what division he should be playing in, but probably what conference. Last year, I basically drove a recruiting car 250 miles a day, 6 months out of the year to go see these kids. I've done that many times in the past. If I talk to 350 kids, I'm lucky to get 10 admittances. A lot of parents adopted this model like soccer with these clubs. They don't want the kid only to play lacrosse. They have them doing multiple sports. So what you find out here in California is the quality of the coaching has to filter down into the youth groups in the high schools. For a lot of the kids in the MCLA, for a lot of them lacrosse is a pastime. It is something they do amongst other things. On the East Coast, kids, their whole identity is about playing lacrosse. These kids here, if it is the least bit inconvenient, they'll quit. They just don't want to do it. I say we are fighting an epidemic of affluenza.